Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me in this video. Today is Wednesday, the 19th day of March 2025. After the military invaded the Rivers State Government House yesterday, as reported, what happened next is the report that soldiers hold Fubara family hostage at Rivers governor's residence. Okay, soldiers hold Fubara family hostage at Rivers governor's residence, and what resulted to holding a governor hostage? I know that the process of, election in Nigeria is all about rigging, but the so-called people elected governor, how can a military hold him hostage? That is an evidence to show you that you don't have a working nation. You don't have a working nation at all. Now, we are going to look into the details of how this thing happened, why Fubara was, held hostage yesterday, who authorized the hostage, and so on and so forth. But let us look into what Ruben Abati and Nnamdi on Arise News about the illegality of President Tinubu declaring that he is suspending a governor, that the Federal Executive Council will now make laws for Rivers State, and so on and so forth. Take a listen.
Which the president himself highlighted. He said he was acting within the purview of Section 305 of the Constitution. Section 305 of the Constitution explains the circumstances under which the president shall declare a state of emergency. And the conditions are properly stated. If the country is facing a threat of war or imminent war, is Nigeria facing the threat of war in Rivers State? That's one question. It also talks about, a situation whereby something could happen in any part of the federation where, Nigeria could find itself in a chaotic situation. The president is required to act. Number three, where the governor in that particular state does not immediately respond, to the crisis situation and does not approach the president to act in the national interest. So those conditions are properly spelled out. However, that same Section 305 says that the president, will give a proclamation which will be gazetted, and then will go to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly, if it's in session within, 48 hours, would act. If it's in recess, within 10 days, will act. If the National Assembly does not consider that particular proclamation, gazetted proclamation, valid, then it will vote otherwise. 2/3 majority of the two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and if that happens, the decision is abated. Okay? Now, because we are constrained by time, let me now say that Section 305, which the president quoted, is the operative principle. Now, let's look at what the president said. I think that the president has violated the Constitution, even within the purview of Section 305. And he has violated the Constitution because he was not properly advised to respect that section of the Constitution. In what regard did he violate that section of the Constitution? In fact, he acted as a dictator by saying that the administrator that he has appointed can make regulations and laws will be made for the Rivers State House of Assembly henceforth by the Federal Executive Council. The Federal Executive Council does not have such powers. Section 11 of the same Constitution says that, look, when there is a state of emergency, it's only the National Assembly that can make laws for a state House of Assembly. Now, President Tinubu has appropriated unto himself the powers to make laws for the Rivers State House of Assembly. That's an impeachable offense. I don't know whether the National Assembly will have the courage either to reject his gazetted proclamation or to proceed on an issue of impeachment against him for violating the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, the other relevant...
I think that is the position of the law. The reason why Reuben Abati is talking like this was because when the Goodluck Jonathan was the president of Nigeria, when he declared state of emergency in Borno, Yobe, and one other state, Reuben Abati came to Arise News then. Oh, it was Channels Television to say that the Goodluck Jonathan don't have the power to suspend governors. That he only declared state of emergency to allow the military to fight Boko Haram. And he laid down instances why or how a president or what we need a president to declare a state of emergency and so on and so forth. And I made mention yesterday that where Tinubu's son went to Yobe State, after he left, Boko Haram gave almost a local government, many communities in Yobe State, ultimatum to relocate within 7 days. That is just enough to declare state of emergency in that state. But they are looking for how to win election 2027. And I do warn Nigerians, forget about all these things and fight for your future. You don't have future in this contraption. Now, tell me, a lot of people are talking about 2027. Why are you going to do election with Tinubu? I am just laughing at people because you people don't learn from history. I hate people who don't learn from history. So you think that this nation, you can vote and produce a leader of your own? You are just joking. I don't know why Nigerians joke a lot. Now, let us look at what the People's Gazette reported yesterday. It says Governor Fubara and his family members are being held hostage at the government house, Port Harcourt, by contingent of heavily armed soldiers Tuesday night, People's Gazette announced. The development comes moments after President Bola Tinubu invoked Section 180 of the Nigerian Constitution to proclaim a state of emergency in Rivers State. The Nigerian leader based his controversial move on a prolonged and rapidly escalating political feud led by the state lawmakers loyal to Nyesom Wike, who commenced impeachment proceedings against Mr. Fubara last week to settle scores in his fallout with Mr. Wike, who engineered Mr. Fubara's election in 2023 despite corruption charges. Rivers government sources told the Gazette that soldiers carrying out the president's instruction on declaring the state of emergency barricaded all entrances and exits to the government house immediately after president's speech. Attempts by Mr. Fubara and his family to pack their belongings out of the government house have been rebuffed by the soldiers, who suppressed all movements around the premises. You understand? We are being held hostage, an affected official told the Gazette from the scene on Tuesday night. They said they don't have instruction to let anyone to leave the premises. Now, who authorized these people to hold Fubara hostage? Tinubu. This is a proxy war. Tinubu is directly fighting Fubara because he needs Rivers State in 2027. So Tinubu authorized the soldiers to hold Fubara and family, not to allow them to go out. Anyway, if Nigeria was to be a working nation, Tinubu would pay heavily. By now, his impeachment proceedings supposed to be on. But Akpabio is a puppet. Akpabio is a puppet to Tinubu. Akpabio will always say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. This is the kind of nation people are also hoping that that is where they are going to have a bright future also for their children. I pity a lot of people who don't still understand the writing on the wall. We are not even talking about the insecurity, the killings everywhere that the government is supposed to pay attention to, because the primary purpose of government is the security of life and property of the people. But they don't care. Now, the spokesperson for the Nigerian Army and Defense Headquarters did not immediately return requests seeking comments about the soldiers' treatment of the Fubaras. Mr. Tinubu's declaration to suspend the feuding parties from office for 6 months, effective Tuesday, sparked furious debate across social media as netizens argued whether the president had constitutional grounds to suspend an elected governor whom the state lawmakers have not yet impeached. Efforts to impeach Mr. Fubara began on Monday, barely 24 hours before Mr. Tinubu imposed an emergency ordinance. Lawyers like Inebie F. Young and Fondaren Fandana have excoriated the president for making the law into his own hands without regard for the constitution's position. The president named retired chief of naval staff Ebuka Obi as the military administrator in Rivers State in the interim. So Rivers State, as we all know, have interim government today. So you have been hearing about interim government before, right? Yeah. Rivers State now have interim government. So Tinubu actually ought to be impeached if Nigeria is a working nation. Impeach him as soon as possible. But Akpabio will not do that. Akpabio will not do that. In fact, Akpabio endorsed what Tinubu said. They consulted the House of Assembly. They consulted the Senate. Just imagine, they consulted you, could not advise president on what to do. Shame unto Nigerian leaders. Shame unto people who still believe that this is a nation. No, this is just a banana republic. And when Nnamdi Kanu called Nigeria a zoo, people said Nnamdi Kanu used, a foul language against Nigeria. But this is not a foul language. Nigeria is a zoo. In fact, a zoo is more coordinated than this nation you call Nigeria.